VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We have entered the bye week. The Vikings somehow are 5-0, the only undefeated team next to the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Vikings are in the driver's seat to reach the postseason. I think the only thing preventing fans from jumping in with both feet is memories of what has happened in 2016 and 2003 when they started 6-0. This team is pretty damn balanced. Those teams were not. The 2016 team did not have the offense that this one has. It couldn't run the football. In 2003, if you were around back then, that team didn't play defense. It was one of those vintage Mike Tice teams that was offense, and more offense. So although nobody would be absolutely flabbergasted if this season had some sort of a meltdown, I don't think it's coming. This team is too balanced and playing too well, and the schedule really lightens up pretty much after the Lions game. If you still have some of those fears about the Vikings on the road at places like Los Angeles, certainly the schedule lightens up thereafter. The hard part of the schedule is almost over, and we knew that back in May. And somehow the Vikings are either going to be 7-0, 5-2, or 6-1 once they get to the mushy part of the schedule. But on Sunday in London, the Vikings are now undefeated in London, including an exhibition game, 5-0 across the pond. Aaron Jones, hip injury, and the moment that guy went out of the lineup, you could see the offense just, and that was that. It looked like the old Vikings offenses from probably the bad ruts of 2022 or 2023. They were never long spanning, but there were times in games during the O'Connell regime here when they can't run the football, that the 3-and-out start, and that is precisely what happened against the Jets in London. So, according to Pro Football Talk, Aaron Jones should be good to go in, 12 days when the Vikings take on the Lions. So we'll take that to the bank and hope that that's all, true. And by the way, that game, if you're going to Vikings-Lions, that game is going to be electric. Because the San Francisco 49ers have a 2-3 record right now, whoever wins Vikings-Lions is going to establish the NFC Super Bowl frontrunner, at least for a few weeks. So if that's the Lions, then everybody's going to say it's probably going to be the Lions and the Chiefs, or who else could emerge from the AFC? Bills look a little shaky. Houston got creamed by these Vikings. I don't know. I don't know who the flavor of the week other than the Chiefs would be. Probably the Ravens, because they've won the last couple games. But yeah, get ready for Vikings-Lions to be loud, in your face. And man, if they can win that one, they're going to go to 6-0, and we will get even more excited than we are now. However, because the Vikings offense became totally one-dimensional once Aaron Jones suffered the hip injury, it brought back those and oh gosh, what are we doing here? Ty Chandler couldn't get anything going, especially after that comical fumble. And I've had folks ask me, well, what would they do if Aaron Jones isn't ready for the Lions game? Or I think a fairer question to ask about Jones is, first of all, you should have expected this about Aaron Jones. This is the only knock on that guy is some injuries from time to time. And he's going to be 30 in December. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's another injury that comes up if this one, is put to bed within the next 12 days. So this show is designed to look at some contingency plans at running back if Jones is on the shelf this time or something happens disadvantageous in the next, how many games we got left? 12 games. So the free agent options, let's start with those because those are the most realistic. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah after breakfast today could go sign one of about 5 or 6 guys. So on this list, these are simply dudes who are on the open market waiting to be signed. I got them in alphabetical order. Matt Breida, you might remember him from some of those Giants teams. This guy in his prime was a speedster, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and I think that will be a key for any would-be addition would be that the guy can at least catch the ball too, kind of the anti-Adrian Peterson way, because that's how this offense is suited right now. Melvin Gordon probably doesn't move the needle a lot, but he's out there if you needed a emergency RB3. Dwayne McBride, believe it or not, is not on the Vikings practice squad. He's still gettable if for some reason we realize they like him again. Gordon and McBride are probably low on everybody's list, but then you get to the fun ones after Breida. Jerick McKinnon, although he's 32, 33, he played for the Vikings for the entirety of his rookie contract. What was that, 20, 2013 to 2016, I believe. And he won a couple Super Bowls with the Chiefs. He's a free agent. He's old, but, desperate times. He can certainly catch the ball out of the backfield. In fact, he's not even really trustworthy as a regular running back to hand the ball to. But if you use him in a dual threat purpose, Jerick McKinnon probably still has a little bit of juice left. Latavius Murray is also ageless, like Diet Frank Gore. He is not signed by anybody. Usually he is. I'm guessing if the Vikings wanted it's hard to say bona fide or a sure thing in Latavius because, you're not going to have him go to a Pro Bowl. But somebody that's probably going to get you 4 yards per carry, and that's about it, but never too much less. Latavius Murray would make sense. And then you might remember James Robinson from, 2020 lore with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had 1,000 yards. In the following year, they drafted Travis Etienne and said, see you later. And Robinson has never rekindled his career. So those are the free agent options. I don't think any of them stand off the page as a RB1. Let's say Kwesi Adofo-Mensah says, you know what, we like Matt Breida. We're going to go sign him. It would probably be the Ty Chandler show if Jones wasn't available. And then Myles Gaskin and Matt Breida. Or Myles Gaskin and James Robinson would be available for depth. And then Latavius Murray, of course, is intriguing. Jerick McKinnon doing the dual threat. And he has that Super Bowl experience. That's kind of enticing. I wouldn't be upset by that one. And then just throwaways, kind of Melvin Gordon, who's old, and Dwayne McBride, who probably isn't good in the first place. Those are the free agents. Breida, Gordon, McBride, McKinnon, Murray, and James Robinson. So when we're late in the game here, we're going into week 6, so there's not going to be some glorious free agent running back waiting for the call. But those would be the quasi-depth options. And Latavius Murray, in particular, has shown repeatedly that if you give him somewhat of a RB1 assignment, he's not going to utterly disappoint you. So free agent options, those are those. Next, so there's not a lot of trade options either, mainly because the Vikings don't have tons of draft picks to spend on anything. They spent a lot on the Dallas Turner trade, so as we look at it right now, it's next year's first rounder that was so precious, 2 months ago thinking about it, but now it's probably going to be in the 20s. So bless their heart, we'll take it. Everything else is wiped out besides a compensatory third-round pick, which wouldn't be able to be traded now. You have to wait till it arrives in the piggy bank. I think that's in February. And then I think it's 2 fifth-rounders that are left over that I guess they could trade if they needed to. But there's also guys on teams' practice squads. You might remember 2 years ago when Luigi Villain got stolen off the Vikings practice squad by the Carolina Panthers. The Vikings could do that to another team. So at the top of the list for trade for me would be Miles Sanders on the Panthers. Let me explain myself. No, he's not a badass, but he's decent. He might be a slight upgrade over Ty Chandler. I don't know. We have to see how he looks in the Vikings offense. But soon, Jonathan Brooks, the first running back off the board, I believe, in the draft, he is going to be healthy. His practice window was opened, I think. And then they're going to have Chuba Hubbard, however you say his name. He's turned into a good running back. If you're a fantasy participant, you know that he's no longer just a guy who gets touches. He's good. And then Miles Sanders is going to be in that room. Jonathan Brooks is coming back. So to me, Miles Sanders is somewhat expendable, especially for a team that's probably angling. I don't know what Panthers are going to do now that the Bryce Young experiment and era is prematurely over, but they may be sellers at the trade deadline. Miles Sanders is probably the most realistic trade option because he can handle somewhat of an RB1 load. And then another kind of somebody who belongs on that free agent list, but he's on the Browns roster, is Donta Foreman. He is their RB3. He's on the list because Kwesi Adofo-Mensah used to work in Cleveland, and I think the communication pipeline would be open if the Vikings wanted Donta Foreman. And then, was it the Purple Persuasion, a account on Twitter, tweeted, how about Travis Etienne? Because Tank Bigsby has come on big here in the last couple weeks. Obviously, I love the idea of Travis Etienne playing for the Vikings, but I don't think that one is entirely realistic because the Vikings would probably have to get rid of a third or fourth rounder to get Etienne, and just because Tank Bigsby has had a good game or two doesn't mean that Etienne is just done for. And I think anything to do with Travis Etienne, a trade by the Vikings with the Jaguars, would involve Aaron Jones being ruled out for the year with a worse injury than he has now. And then, at that time, if the Vikings were 7-0, 8-0, 10-1, something like that, will have to be before 10-1 because of the trade deadline. Let's say that it's right on election day, which is the trade deadline. And how many games will be in the books then? About 10. If they're 9-1, they really think they can win a Super Bowl. Aaron Jones broke his foot or something like that. That's when you'd explore the Travis Etienne thing, in my opinion. Otherwise, I don't think they're going to sell a third or fourth round pick just to have Etienne as depth behind Aaron Jones. Cool idea, however. And then there's the practice squad guys that can be stolen really at any time, so long as the other team, in this case the Vikings, is willing to add that man to the practice squad. Dalvin Cook, he's on the Dallas Cowboys practice squad. Some of you might love that. Some of you might roll your eyes because you think he's washed. Royce Freeman is on the Browns practice squad. That's semi-intriguing. Frank Gore Jr. is on the Bills practice squad. They've got a lot of running backs in Buffalo, headlined by James Cook, Dalvin's brother. Chris Rodriguez on Washington Commanders practice squad. Jamal Williams is not on the practice squad for the Saints, but with Kendre Miller, I think, returning to health soon. Maybe Miller gets more touches in the Saints' somewhat sputtering offense after Monday Night Football. And then one other guy on this list is Keyshawn Vaughn on the San Francisco 49ers practice squad. Everybody but Williams that I just named can get got just by a phone call from the Vikings. So let's go like the most realistic free agent. If the Vikings decided to sign one during this bye week, I would say probably Matt Breida, because I think I should have researched his age. I think he's 29 as well, just like Aaron Jones. I think he could do some things in the Vikings offense, and it wouldn't feel like, you're going to get Melvin Gordon, who I wouldn't expect much for at all. And then trading, I think Miles Sanders would make the most sense because he's about to be expendable when Jonathan Brooks comes back. I won't rule out the Etienne idea in case Aaron Jones is hurt for the long haul, because it would be a Kwesi Mensa thing to do to say, son of a gun, we are 8-0 here at the trade deadline. We are going to get our running back and go win this damn Super Bowl. And then other intrigue, I kind of like the, which one was it? Chris Rodriguez off the Commanders practice squad could make a little sense. But those are the options from other teams via trade or practice squad pilfer. And then the other option, which I don't know if it would be the most realistic, probably, is do nothing, because Aaron Jones is going to heal back soon, according to Pro Football Talk. And if he's not diminished or it's not a lingering injury, it would just be back to normal. Otherwise, the Vikings have constructed this roster for a reason. Just because Ty Chandler didn't look good against the Jets doesn't mean he can't have a good game against the Lions. The Jets' defense, newsflash, is really good. That is their calling card. That is why they stayed somewhat relevant for a lot of the season last year without Aaron Rodgers. They're in the same spot this year with Aaron Rodgers. He's not making that big of a difference. But I think with full prep, the full endorsement behind Ty Chandler, it won't be as bad as it was in London. And you don't want to believe the offense is going to be totally undimensional. If you think back to the Bengals game, Ty Chandler was absolutely fantastic. I think he had 120-something rushing yards. So if Jones were to be out for however many games, relying on Ty Chandler, Myles Gaskin, who they evidently like, and then there's another guy on the practice squad named Xavier Scott, who is a dual threat, a big running back, 6'1", I think 220. But he also catches the football. He did a little bit of that at Connecticut. And we don't know anything about him, so he could be an undercover baller. A lot of times, good offensive-minded thinkers like Kevin O'Connell, you watch this at San Francisco 49ers every year, you can find a running back who's somewhat anonymous and cultivate him within the offense. It's just that we couldn't do that with Alexander Mattison, and so we just think, oh, well, we need a high-profile running back like Aaron Jones. And so far, that experiment has worked. But I wouldn't rule out what they currently have with full preparation, a week's practice, and, Ty Chandler comes out in a game and we're like, oh, he does have some juice. He's faster than Aaron Jones, people. And then you're not going to face the Jets defense every week. When you look at EPA per play, which adjudicates or measures expected wins added, the only defenses that are akin to the Jets the rest of the way are the Bears twice. And even if the Bears defense was shitty, we know that the game against the Vikings is going to be sloppy, low scoring. You almost rule them out. And the Titans have a pretty darn good defense. It's just that nobody cares because their team on the whole isn't any good. So those are the running back options. I guess if you stayed around for the long haul, Matt Breida makes the most sense as a free agent with a possible side dish of Latavius Murray if things got dire. For me, the no-brainer trade candidate would be Miles Sanders because you won't have to trade much for him. It can be one of those conditional 7th rounders in 2026. He's not going to have a big market when Jonathan Brooks gets back. And then Chris Rodriguez, practice squad or something like that, checks out. But the most likely option is rolling with what they have because they like Ty Chandler. And Aaron Jones, we think, won't be out for the long haul. All right, that's all we got. We'll be back with Josh Fry to do a bye-week chat with him tomorrow. Skol, baby.